Hey, here we are, Sports Bit, Betting Inside Today, Paulie and Teddy, Monday, September 11th. Big game breakdown, the doubleheader, Monday Night Football on ESPN. Deep dive every Monday during the football season. We recap the college football weekend, and it's lengthy, but we love to do it. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Play of the day before we get out of here. Week one in the NFL. Let's start with what happened Sunday. First of all, it was a good day for the books because the early games, Teddy, nothing but dogs and a ton of unders. Even though the late games, there was nothing but favorites, but the books cleaned up on the early games.
Yeah, they sure did. Huge Sunday for the sports books, both here in Las Vegas and offshore. Why? Real simple. You look at the combination, favorite / over. Well, you played a parlay, favorite and over, and you went 1 and 12 over the course of the action on Sunday. We're talking about one under after the next, one underdog after the next. Heck, Paulie, you know it's week one in the NFL when the Jags and Bills are sitting alone in first place.
Yeah, there was some, I don't know, the Jets hung in there, although they only scored 12 points. I don't know why the Jets went for 2 in the third quarter. And also the Fletcher Cox play, it looked like he was even surprised it was held up because it looked like that was supposed to be overturned, that the ball was, that wasn't a fumble, it was an incomplete pass.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you talk about tough beats on Sunday, there wasn't a true bad beat on the NFL card for Sunday, but man, there were 2 tough ones. You know, as you mentioned, the Jets go for a 2-point conversion in the third quarter. They're chasing in the third. And 2-point conversion, the single most important point spread play there is. The Jets came up short. The Jets didn't cover the number. And that was, we're not going to call it a bad beat, but that was a tough beat. And same story with the Cox fumble 6. I had a Philadelphia ticket in my pocket. I was cheering like crazy for that play. You watched the replay. That wasn't a fumble 6. It was an incomplete pass. Tough beat if you had the Redskins on a play that should have been overturned. I did not feel particularly confident with Philadelphia going into that last drive. Eagles were kind of lucky to get the score and very lucky that that score was upheld by video review. Tough beat if you had Washington.
I think the story from Sunday was bad quarterback play and horrendous offensive line performances by Seattle, Houston. There were some other ones too, but it was bad all the way around.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were some, when you look back at the weekend, say, what offenses played really well this past weekend? Well, thinking, Kansas City on Thursday night. That's about it. When you're looking at really elite level offensive performances, the Chiefs were it. You know, there were 3 different games in which neither team gained 300 yards. Jags, Texans, Steelers, Browns, Panthers, 49ers. There was some pretty ugly offensive football on display on Sunday, and it all starts with the Indianapolis Colts and Scott Tolzien.
Well, I don't think he should start again. I think Brissett should be in there Sunday. 2 pick sixes, first possession of the year, a pick 6. The Rams also had a touchdown. Goff looked good, and he was terrible. Cousins struggled. The Giants' offensive line was a mess. And they certainly missed Beckham, too, as they couldn't do anything on offense in the 19-3 loss.
Yeah, and let's run through them one by one because each one deserves a little bit of love. Okay, look at the graphic. Colts offense with Scott Tolzien on the field. Let's see, they scored 3. The Rams defense with Scott Tolzien on the field. Yeah, they scored 14. They got a safety late as well. But Indy was every bit as bad defensively as they were offensively. Don't think for a minute the Rams' offensive problems are solved. The Colts were an F- on Sunday, both sides of the football. You talk about the Redskins and their turnovers by Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was not sharp with his new receiving core. Josh Doxson, a guy who was supposed to be an impact player, non-factor for Washington, spent the game on the bench. And you talked about Houston. You know, here's your first QB change already. Tom Savage, I think he's already lost his job. You know, he was sacked 6 times in the first half. It's not like the Jags didn't do anything, did a whole lot on offense, but they were able to get an interception, 4 more sacks in the second half against Deshaun Watson. There was hope with Watson. There was no hope with Savage. I don't think we see Tom Savage on the field again for the Houston Texans. And that means that Bill O'Brien might be starting a true rookie on the road on a short week. Let's not forget, the Houston Texans play on Thursday night at Cincinnati.
Yeah, looks like it. And probably be Savage though. Bad news today. Watson limping around, so that can't be good. They have to make a decision soon. Charlie check down, move over from Alex Smith to Josh McCown. 187 yards on 39 attempts. Everything was short. Andy Dalton was terrible. 4 interceptions. How about the yards in that game? 268 to 221. And the Bengals get shut out 20 to nothing. 49ers couldn't do anything on offense. They took some money late. And as we mentioned with the Giants, Beckham, I would go to, if you want that new contract, now's the time. Brandon Marshall had one catch. They couldn't do anything. The offensive line was terrible, couldn't run the ball, only 3 points to start.
Yeah, exactly. Guys who did very, very well yesterday when it came to contract negotiations include Odell Beckham, Dwayne Brown, the Houston Texans offensive tackle who's holding out. Those are all guys that probably made themselves a few extra bucks with their team's performances without them on the field yesterday. You talked about Dalton. Dalton finished 16 of 31 with 174 yards, 4 interceptions. He was sacked 5 times. They had 148 net passing yards on 36 dropbacks. He had the lowest QBR of any QB in any game in the entire 2016 season. The 49ers, look, we tried to tell you on Sportsbet, the wise guys are going to like this team. They're not ready yet. We read you the quotes from San Francisco talking about how complex the offense was and how many struggles they had putting it together. A great quote from Joe Staley we had right here on Sportsbet. What happened? They had 39 dropbacks to pass, 166 yards. That's not pretty. And the Giants, their running back core was abysmal. They might have the worst running backs in the NFL. Brandon Marshall looked old. Whatever the Giants were power rating wise going into last night's game, I don't know about you, Paulie. I made a fairly significant adjustment downward.
We'll see how they do Monday night against the Lions. Super contest update here in Vegas. #1 contest in the world. A record 2,700 entries. First place is $1.3 million. You also had the Super Contest Gold, $5,000 to get in, winner take all. They had 94. And this is amazing. This happens every week, but it's week 1. 14 people didn't put their plays in the $1,500 Super Contest entry, and one guy in the Gold paid $5,000, and the guy forgot to put his picks in. And of course, it's usually a horror show. It's full of square money and a lot of dead money. The consensus went 0-5 out of the gate.
Yeah, and let's pay attention to this. Of course, this is something that we're not able to talk about on the show because the Super Contest consensus isn't released until Saturday. Obviously, we don't do shows over the weekend, but I'm going to tweet it out. You follow me on Twitter at Teddy_covers. You can follow Paulie on Twitter at what's your Twitter handle, Paulie? At Paul Howard. But the bottom line,
good job bringing it up.
Follow us on Twitter
at Paulie Howard with the Y.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. My apologies. But look at what the consensus was. Bengals -2.5, Texans -5, Titans -2.5, Falcons -6.5, Cardinals -2, 5 chalk. The markets were certainly interested in taking those extra half points, the 2.5s, the 2.5s, the 6.5s, etc. That consensus went 0-5. It lost consistently last year. It's lost consistently for a long time. Be aware of the Super Contest consensus. Be aware of getting involved with fading it on a weekly basis.
And one more. We shouldn't be doing this show. We should be living somewhere, private property on a beach. The Dodgers lose again. They've dropped 15 of 16. They're the only team in MLB history to win 15 of 16 and lose 15 of 16 in the same season. They took money again yesterday. Not only have they lost 10 in a row and 15 of 16, they are laying big prices in a lot of these. Remember, Kershaw was 340 in one of them. They were 235 yesterday as they got swept again. And then you got the Indians, who have won 18 in a row. I mean, imagine you parlay the Indians going against the Dodgers. You're cleaning up. And the Indians are covering most of those on the run line during that 18-game winning streak.
They've been monsters. But it's the Dodgers who are doing their truly historic things right now. Look at the tweet from CBS Sports. The first place Dodgers in the midst of their worst losing skid in the last 25 years. This is the team. There was a 55-cent move in favor of the Dodgers yesterday. They're better from -180 to -235. They were never in the game with an 8-1 loss. The markets continue to chase LA, even though they keep losing. And if you haven't cashed in betting against the Dodgers during this remarkable skid for an elite team, you've missed a pretty exceptional betting opportunity. Hopefully, you're able to take advantage of the next one.
Yeah, once in a lifetime for a team to have that streak and what they're laying in every single game, because they're still priced as the best team in baseball. Up next, the Monday Night
Well, think
Football
about the Red
doubleheader.
Sox and that collapse.
Yeah.
You know, the year with what was it when they had the fried chicken in the clubhouse? There was a lot of money to be made against Boston in September that year. They do happen. You do see September failures from elite level teams.
Yeah, but
On
not
occasion.
not priced like this though, because this team was so good. People thought they put a prop up, would they break the all-time record for most wins? Now they've lost 15 to 16. Monday Night Football doubleheader up next, and the deep dive, college football and the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, time for Big Game Breakdown, always sponsored and powered by BetOnline. First game, 4 o'clock Pacific. Vikings at home to the Saints. Minnesota 3, 48 the total. Exceptional customer service and strong promotions. Every type of wager you're looking for with BetOnline. So here we go. AP back to Minnesota, 32 years old. Still says he has something left in the tank. A good quote here. In my mind, we're starting and ending the season in Minnesota. I want to stick it to them. I want to stick it to everyone we play. But going back to Minnesota playing the Vikings, yeah, I want to stick it to them, of course. And Minnesota gets the Super Bowl in February. You have Breeze. Are they going to change the way they play now that he's lost Cooks and some of his weapons over the last few years? When you have Ingram and AP, will we see more of a running attack with New Orleans?
There's certainly signs of that. You know, Breeze is talking about feeding AP tonight. Quote, he's a future Hall of Famer. He's meant a lot to that team for a long time and probably the community as well. So, yeah, it's emotional, but this is a team that's definitely going to need the running game. Without Brandon Cooks, who obviously went to New England in the offseason, Willie Snead, who's suspended right now. These are two guys that combined to catch 150 passes for more than 2,000 yards last year. Now, we know that Michael Thomas and Drew Brees have good chemistry, but the rest of the receiving corps, Ted Ginn and company, very, very questionable as to the continuity and comfort level that Brees has with these guys. So what New Orleans needs to do, real simple game plan tonight. They need to run the football and take the crowd out of the game against this defense. You know, the Vikings at home last year, elite numbers against the pass. They allowed a 76.1 passer rating. That would have ranked number 3 in the NFL prorated to a full season. Of course, those are just their home numbers. So we're talking about a top-notch pass defense and a quarterback who may not have the same level of chemistry with his receivers that he had last year, which means they better be able to run the football.
Well, the whole key to the handicap in this season is their offensive line. Could the Vikings protect Bradford and get the running game going? They picked up Murray from the Raiders. They took Cook in the draft. Cook won the job. But dead last year in rushing yards per game, 75.3, and yards per rush at 3.2. They were also 23rd in sacks allowed. Bradford had a good year. He was pretty good. Passes longer than 15 yards. Problem was he didn't have the opportunity to throw a lot of passes down the field because the offensive line was so bad. This is a team that started 5-0, and then all hell broke loose after the bye week, and they missed the playoffs. It's one of the best home field advantages in all of sports, and they tried to fix the offensive line with Berger, Riley Reif, Remmers at right tackle. So that's a whole key to the season. Remember, they got off to that good start because the offensive line was good. Then they had so many injuries, offense and defense, then the wheels came off.
I couldn't disagree more. I thought that Sam Bradford was mediocre at best last season. Now, he led the NFL in completion percentage. Why? Because he didn't throw a single pass longer than 5 yards downfield. The whole offense was dink and dunk. They were doing everything to protect Bradford from the hits that he was taking behind that abysmal offensive line. And at the end of the season, the stats say, oh, Sam Bradford was pretty good. If you watched him, Sam Bradford didn't win them any games. And that 5-0 start was all about the defense making key plays at key times. Now, it may be different this year because remember, they got Bradford at the end of training camp, after training camp last year. So he kind of came in and was forced to work. He was forced to fit into the system without a training camp. They changed offensive coordinators when Norv Turner got fired mid-season or quit mid-season. So it was really not a lot of continuity for that Minnesota offense. This year, Bradford at least had a training camp. He's got a running back. In theory, he has an improved offensive line, but I've got questions about that offensive line. Again, dead last in rushing yards per game last year, dead last in yards per rush, the bottom of the league in sacks allowed, despite the fact they weren't taking any 7-step drops. And, only one guy back at the same position. 3 of the 9 offensive linemen on the roster are rookies. 6 of the 9 are in their 3rd NFL season or less. So they paid a lot of money for a couple of mediocre free agents. We'll see if that offensive line actually holds up to a real NFL pass rush tonight. I wouldn't count on it. I'm not sold on the Vikings as being even a decent offensive team, let alone a good one.
All right, game number 2. Second game of the doubleheader, Chargers and the Broncos. Denver 343 the total. Surprised that total is sitting at 43. Last 10 years, the Broncos 7-1 straight up and 6-2 ATS. The first game of the season, last 8 years. Altitude should help. Maybe the teams aren't conditioned as well, especially when there's less hitting in camp. How much will they miss Ward, who was surprisingly cut last weekend? And remember, they were nasty when they won the Super Bowl, but pretty good defense last year, but they could not stop the run.
Yeah, and of course, you talk about 43, and that total stands out. As we speak, the markets are moving to 42 and a half, posted 43. Obviously, that was what it was when we started to record, but we are seeing under money in this ballgame, and we have seen Denver enjoy a very strong home field edge in that first meeting of the season. Think about preseason. Nobody plays more than a half in general. Maybe some of the guys get on the field for the third quarter in week 3, but guys aren't max conditioned in week 1. They're just not. They haven't played enough game weight. So the fact that you're playing in altitude, it has mattered for Denver over the years. They've been pretty good in these first openers at home, their opening day game at home. But you talk about TJ Ward. I mean, that was a shocking cut to me. And we're also talking about a team that, again, you're losing one of the key playmakers from their secondary, from a defense that was, oh, by the way, truly elite. Look at the numbers. Look at the graphic. Last year, Denver's QB rating allowed under 70. The number 2 team over 75. The NFL average close to 88. So Denver effectively lapped the field. Ward was one of the biggest playmakers on that defense. And now they also have depth concerns on the defensive line. Multiple injuries for Denver in terms of their pass rush tonight. So a squad that led the NFL in pass defense by wide margins in back-to-back seasons, well, now they're going to be relying on Justin Simmons, a guy who played mostly on special teams last year, to take Ward's place. And, of course, we're not talking about necessarily an elite offense. Trevor Siemian, he's been serviceable. I don't know that he brings a whole lot of upside. It is worth noting, though, Mike McCoy is drawing up the plays for Denver, and I don't know there's a whole lot of people in the world that have a more intimate knowledge of San Diego's defensive weaknesses, or certainly their personnel, than Mike McCoy, the Chargers' former head coach. He should know those Chargers defenders well.
Also, McCoy probably knows how to slow down that offense and how you contain Rivers as well. They underachieved under McCoy. Injuries were a big part, though. They lost more games to injury than any other team in McCoy's 4 seasons. They were in the bottom 5 in the league in each season as well. No Perriman, and we'll see if Rivers can take advantage of this Denver defense without Ward. Now, something to watch, too. Rivers didn't move to L.A. He's commuting. He's driving 70 miles to the facility for practice. He decided to commute with a tricked-up ride. As you see the picture here, he hopes that watching game fills during the commute will help. Quote, there will be some days we're hoping to get in a little traffic because we have more work to do. That is fascinating to watch in that one. Up next, we'll get to college football and a recap from a wild weekend with a lot of upsets and bad beats coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Wrapping it up on SportsBit, Betting Insight today, Paulie and Teddy. Time for the deep dive. We do it every Monday during the football season. We start with the NFL and finish with college football. 2 bad beats to speak of right out of the gate. Oregon, laying 10.5, 12.5, depends where you bet it. It was up to 14. Money came in on Nebraska. It was 42-14 at the half. Oregon didn't score the rest of the game, and they also intercepted Nebraska 4 times and still couldn't get the money.
Yeah, that's a tough beat. You're up 42-14 at halftime. That game was a rout. It was over. There was a ton of late Nebraska money. As you mentioned, the Ducks were as high as 14. They were bet all the way down to 10.5. They're up by 28 at the break. They don't get the money. Bad beat via the Oregon Ducks.
And this one was an all-timer. Boise State money line, catching 10 or 8, whenever you bet it. They were up 31-10 with 8 minutes left on the road, and Falk was out, so they were facing Washington State's backup quarterback. There was a pick six. There was a punt that hit a returner in the back. Lunacy. They blow it and lose in triple overtime, 47-44.
Sure, and the Broncos were looking at a big payday, or Broncos backers looking at a big payday with them as 10-point dogs on the money line. Nice cash. Let's see, you're up 3 touchdowns with 8.5 left. You're supposed to cash those bets. That's a tough beat. And the way that it happened with those bizarre circumstances, a little Mike Leach late night magic in Pullman on Saturday. Boise still got the money plus the points, but money line backers, that was a tough one.
All right, let's go rapid fire. A lot of bad bets. Ohio, Friday night, they took money. Plus 4.5 down to 2.5. Purdue ran them out. You think Jeff Brom can coach? In Nebraska, Oregon, under 73.5 down to 68. Never a chance.
Yeah, okay, Brom. 2-0 against the spread at Purdue. He's beat the spread by a combined 39 points in those games. His former team, Western Kentucky, 0-2 against the spread. They've lost to the spread by a combined 43.5 points. So, yeah, Jeff Brom's made a pretty big difference. And obviously, you talk about that under. Well, for Nebraska, Oregon, all that under money. The Cornhuskers defense tightened. Well, it was a little bit too late for the under bettors after Nebraska's defense started to play. Ducks got shut out in the second half. Didn't matter. Game still went over the total.
Two bad from the same game, both of them. Wisconsin, 29.5 to 34.5, and the total 57.5 to 59.5. Wisconsin only scored 31 points. Rutgers, look at this, up to 3, bet from 3.5 to 6 at home. They lost outright to Eastern Michigan, and Oregon State, they're a bad team. Remember, their only win is against Portland State at home by 3. Bet from Pick'em to 2.5. Minnesota killed them on the road in the rain.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the Wisconsin money. The favorite and over money showed heavy favorite money, heavy over money, but the favorite didn't even score enough to cover the spread if it was a shutout. Hard to lay big points with Wisconsin. They play a slow tempo, not a whole lot of chances for big plays. Rutgers against Eastern Michigan. Look, I watched that game. I had Rutgers money in my pocket. They were not the better team. A middling MAC team was the superior squad. There was nothing fraudulent about that result. Rutgers power ratings, you don't want to adjust them up after Washington. Probably want to adjust them down. They were not a confident squad. And the Beavers now 0-3 ATS. They haven't even come close to covering a point spread. Expect a big market adjustment this week. Oregon State has lost to the number by 87.5 points over their first 3 games of action.
Bad for the books, a lot here. Notice how this game felt. Iowa opened 1.5, closed 3.5 at Iowa State. They won by 3 in overtime, 44-41. That's not good. This was favorite and over twice. West Virginia 19.5 to 25, total 61.5 all the way to 69.5. They thumped East Carolina and almost dropped 60 on them. Louisville 6.5 up to 12, and the total 63.5 to 66. And they beat North Carolina on the road 47-35. Jackson 500 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Well, Jackson was unreal on Saturday, but we got to talk about Iowa State, Iowa, a game that the books were primed to cash in on. There was all this Iowa money. Iowa State was about to win. Well, you see the catch right there. Look at the picture. Late Iowa TD to tie it, send it to OT, and then the worst case scenario for the books. Everyone that bet Iowa State late cashed. Everyone that bet Iowa early cashed. Middle, that's never a good result for the house. And you talked about the 2 favorites, West Virginia and Louisville. Well, at least East Carolina, the defense coordinator Kenwick Thompson got fired after the game, so bettors won't get another chance to knock him down, at least not this season.
Look at this. This is something to follow. You wonder if Baylor's going to quit on the season. Laying 33 at home to Liberty, lost the game, plus 16-17 at home to Texas San Antonio, bet down to 11, lost the game. They didn't do anything on offense. Look at the yards in that game as well. As they lose, and now the schedule actually gets tough, and they have to go to Duke, who just destroyed Northwestern. TCU opened the dog, went off the favorite, laying 2.5 against Bielema. They won 28-7, and Mississippi State, that are from 6.5 to 10, they ran out Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about Baylor, because this is a team that has lost straight up at home as double-digit chalk to Liberty and Texas San Antonio the first 2 weeks, and they've lost those games because the 2 lesser schools players were every bit as good as Baylor's kids. Whatever your power number for Baylor, crash it. That team It's going to be a long rebuild, let's put it this way, for Matt Rule and company. And stat play of the year, we have to talk about what happened in that Louisiana Tech game because it's going to mess up everybody's databases. La Tech lost 87 yards on a bizarre fumble scramble. It went from a 1st and goal to first and inside their own 10-yard line, and that goes down as a rushing loss for them. Yeah, exactly. So it comes out as a rushing loss for them and a huge play for the Mississippi State defense. That's something you need to manually adjust if you're dumping data into your personal stat sheets. That's a misleading stat. The rushing yards must be manually adjusted for that ballgame.
Yeah, you'll never see that again. It was 3rd and 93 for Louisiana Tech. 2 more. UNLV opened an 8-point dog. Money came in, closed 4.5. Idaho never in the game. Good road win for UNLV, 44-16 after the embarrassment against Howard. And I talked to Nick Bogdanovich, director of trading at William Hill. All the Utah fans were driving to the border to Wendover, Nevada to bet Utah. They were a +1.5, went off the favorite -4.5. A huge move. Nothing but Utah money. It was the biggest decision of the day. And he told me that on a Friday, 1913 Utah.
Yeah, it was an absolute disaster for the sports books. I mean, that particular game, you talked about Utah, and I think we had the graphic wrong. That's my fault. They were dogs at the open. They were +1.5. Yep. They closed -4.5. There was a deluge of Utah money. The pros liked it. The public liked it. And bettors saw the talent gap. You know, BYU went independent. We wondered how it was going to go. Well, I have concerns about the talent level on that team. They just have no skill position talent whatsoever. Bettors saw it, bettors cashed in, and the bookmaker's going to have to make a big adjustment for the BYU power rating moving forward.
Yeah, and Ty Detmer is going conservative. Well, good luck. You get Wisconsin now at home next week. Nice stretch for BYU. Money time, play of the day. Back to the early game. Monday night doubleheader. Teddy, what are we doing?
Let's go. Game number 479. Betting number 479. We'll take the New Orleans Saints plus the 3. It's real simple. If you're going to trust any quarterback on the road on this strong on this strong home field, that quarterback's got to be Drew Brees. Saints upgraded their defense. Don't trust the Vikings offensive line to win by margin. New Orleans plus the 3. That's our play of the day.
All right, very good. Football back. Good week 1. Good card coming up Saturday in college football. We'll talk to you tomorrow on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.